Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining me again for February 16th, 2018. I happily made it to my 40th birthday. Yay, me! I'm now an old man, or I'm happily settling into middle age. And so, anyway, it's time for astrology in the news. And boy, we've had a pretty active news day. Now, of course, the Florida, whenever we have a mass shooting, it really tends to take up the news cycle for a few days. People are like, oh, the day one, everybody got shot, then we cry, then we call for gun control, and then 2 weeks later, nothing happened. So maybe something will happen. I think by summer, we should have some legislation on that, but I'll go into that on a different cast. So guess what? Robert Mueller Bueller indicts Russians in probe. If you haven't saw, he indicted 13 Russians of interfering with the United States elections. And basically what we have is 13 Russians got together and decided to troll people, say stuff against Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump at the same time. Donald Trump is not involved in this indictment at all whatsoever. And so I think Trump is going to get away just fine with this, or nothing's really going to happen to him as a result of the Russia probe. And the reason why I say this is because we're actually going through a second eclipse cycle right now. So the first eclipse cycle was in August, let's see, it was on August 16th, and then we had an eclipse yesterday on February 15th. And this actually directly affects Robert Mueller's chart. And I'm going to call him Mueller because I'm from Milwaukee, and that's a German name. It's Mueller. Okay, pretty annoying, right? Um, so anyway, we can see his chart right here. So when we look at the first eclipse, the first solar eclipse occurred at about 5 or 6 degrees of the Vedic sidereal zodiac, and that was close to the fixed star Regulus. So anybody that had any planets close to this star really was affected, and this really involved a lot of people in leadership positions, and this does not exclude Mueller. He actually has his Venus there. Jupiter is very, very close. So it's not exactly right there, but this eclipse really affected him. Now, the thing is, we don't know what time Robert Mueller was born. So what we do is we go by the moon, and you probably can't see it because my picture's there. And I'm going to be redoing these charts this weekend, so we just have the Rashi chart, the let's see, Russia, the Dasha chart, the Navamsa chart, and then maybe a transit chart. I might throw in fixed stars there too because those are interesting. But Robert Mueller, his moon is in the sign of Pisces, so we'll use that as a first house. So all of this stuff comes in, into play in the sixth house, right? In the sixth house, it's all about enemies, finding enemies, rooting out enemies. It can also involve stuff like sickness, and also too it can involve co-conspirators at work. So I think we have Robert Mueller going through things, and now if you look at the opposite eclipse, this happened, which was almost exactly opposed his Venus, right? And this is in his 12th house. So this is the house of loss. So the way I take this together, I put these eclipses together. We had this investigation initiated when the eclipse was in the sixth house, and this is going to start to begin to wrap up. I mean, especially where Donald Trump is concerned, this is going into his 12th house, which is the house of loss. Okay, so I really think that, and also too, the 12th house is the house of secrets and things like that. So if there was going to be any secrets uncovered, I think we would have seen it by now. So yeah, I mean, really stay tuned because this investigation is going to get way more interesting as time goes. It's starting to flip. All right. Next, Mr. Mitt Romney announces a run for the Utah Senate seat. Now, if you're familiar with Utah, this is probably a lock for him. I mean, unless he has like a serious challenger in the primary, I don't know when the last time a Democrat actually won in Utah. Utah is a very Republican state run by Mormons. Mitt Romney's a Mormon, so they like them, they like other Mormons. So I mean, the fact is that it's a very, very high probability that he is going to win this election just for the sake of who he is, his name recognition. And I don't think the Republicans are going to want to put a Democrat in, especially in Utah. It's just not going to happen. But if we take a look at his chart, hopefully you can see this here. He is actually, this is interesting, when we look at his dasha cycle, so around the election, he's going to be going through the Moon Saturn period. And so we actually know what time Mitt Romney was born. So he was actually born with his ascendant here at 7 degrees of Taurus. Uranus and the north node of the moon are in the first house. North node in the first house dictates a very high achiever. Tom Brady has this combination. I mean, these people really succeed in life. And so you look at the rest of his chart, his moon and his Jupiter are conjunct here in the sign of Scorpio, along with K2. Very powerful for making relationships. I'm surprised he's actually not in law. Was Mitt Romney in law enforcement? No, this is actually somebody that could be in law enforcement if he really wanted to, but I know he hasn't held a law enforcement position. Now, the other thing that you probably cannot see is his Mercury's retrograde, conjunct Mars, and Sun in the sign of Aquarius. So here's what we do. We kind of, this is just a general prediction technique. What you want to do is look at the dasha. So, and the dasha is really going to be around the time that the election is occurring. It's in October, so we got about a month, but Moon and Saturn. So the moon is in the, so the moon is in the 7th house, which is the house of people, relationships. Actually, too, it's pretty good for marriage. And then also, too, Saturn is in the 3rd house. So Saturn being in the 3rd house, this is in the sign of, let's see, that's in the sign of Cancer. Saturn is actually fairly well placed in the 3rd house. Not so well placed in the sign of, not so well placed in the sign of Cancer. However, the 3rd house is called an Upachaya house, so things tend to get better over time. So the way I'm looking at this is he's going to be entering in, with relationships with other people, but I think he's going to pick up the Senate seat. I mean, I'm not seeing anything in this chart. Usually for an election, we want to take a look at the 10th house, and his 10th house is actually ruled by Saturn. So this is, I think, a pretty solid prediction. He's going to be running through an Antar or the 10th Lord. 10th Lord is in the 3rd house. Moon is well placed in the 7th house. So I don't see him not winning the Senate seat, right? So next, the flu virus. It peaks and we're not going to die. If you had the flu though, if you know anybody had the flu, dude, I am sorry. I actually had the flu. I have a pretty good immune system, so it didn't affect me as much as other people. My stepdad is sick right now, and he's got lung cancer, and I'm hoping that he doesn't have the flu. So I'm really, really praying for him. So Ron, if you do see this, praying for you. Everybody say a prayer for my stepdad. So the flu virus, according to the CDC, has peaked, and this was a very rough flu season. And I am going to credit Joni Petrie for predicting this. She actually predicted that there was going to be a very difficult flu season last fall. And I believe if we take a look at her chart, or a look at this chart, this is just a mundane chart. She predicted it because Saturn right here is in the sign of Sagittarius. At the time, Saturn was in Sandi, so I believe that Saturn going through Sagittarius conjunct Pluto can, I believe she said that generally dictates a higher than normal flu season, or at least a rougher than normal flu season. So, hey, kudos to Joni for calling that. So, all right. Other than that, if you want to book a consultation, all the social media links are below. Of course, follow me on Twitter. If you want to catch me on Periscope too, it's at NoBS. At @nobius_yoga. And then, of course, check out my website now, all that stuff. So, all right, kind of a short one tonight. Everybody, thank you so much for joining me. Things to come, I am going to be, like I said, changing the setup here on Sri Jyoti Star. That's a program that I use so that we just have less information, because I know those first pages are a little bit overwhelming for people. So I want to make things easier to read. So, all right, everybody, thank you. Have a great day, and don't have too much fun.